All right, hump day for the first time from Studio Z. Welcome to Frontline, 6 p.m. here on the East Coast. We begin with some breaking news from the White House, actually, where the president met with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. The president expected to address the possibility of leaving the organization, which is music to my ears. We're going to have more on this in just a minute. Also, Microsoft founder and Jeffrey Epstein pal Bill Gates will sit for an interview with the House Oversight Committee as part of the Epstein investigation, similar to the interviews with the Clintons and Les Wexner. It's going to take place on June 10th. We will be all over that. And over the last decade, Illinois has lost 1% of its population. But don't tell the state government that, because the state's spending increased by 72% over the same time span, ever expanding like the governor's belt. But first, maybe the answer was just to not give him a chance and bomb him, because apparently we can't trust anybody over there. Let's do this. All right, so good news, bad news. In the last 22 hours, let's go good news first. There was a large uptick in tanker traffic in the Strait of Hormuz shortly after the ceasefire, albeit lower than normal.
What they're saying publicly is different privately. We have seen an uptick of traffic in the Strait today, and I will reiterate the president's expectation and demand that the Strait of Hormuz is reopened.
Within hours, the Dow soared 1,300 points. Oil plunged to near $90 a barrel. Then, like a few hours later, Iran state media claims that the Strait had then been shut down, which Levitt disputed. Like, okay, like maybe they should just lose a power plant or 5 or so. Look, I was optimistic last night. I mean, you saw me at the end of the show when this news broke, that this would lead to at least some kind of deal with some meaningful progress. And then it didn't. Which goes back to my original point last night. We can also achieve our goals through elimination. Personally, I think that plan looks pretty good right now, because this deal might, and I say might, have gone a little bit better if Israel didn't go bombing Hezbollah in Lebanon like right after the ceasefire was announced. In return to that, Iran then hit Kuwaiti desalinization plants, and basically the whole thing went up in smoke. It just came completely unglued. The administration tried to unpack this one today.
I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. If Iran wants to let this negotiation fall apart in a conflict where they were getting hammered over Lebanon, which has nothing to do with them and which the United States never once said was part of the ceasefire, that's ultimately their choice.
I mean, wow. Iran wasn't clear on something. Imagine that. Respectfully, though, the entire region just needs to stop for take a beat for 2 seconds, guys. The Speaker of Iran's parliament stated that the ceasefire had already been violated, specifically referencing Lebanon, which was never part of the agreement, but they thought it was for some weird reason because they're stupid. My question from day one, though, of this conflict, and since it broke out, does the U.S. and Israel have the same goals? And the answer from last night apparently is no. This is what Trump is dealing with. Remember how frustrated he was at Iran and Israel just a few months ago?
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Look, from my America First seat, this is how I see it. And I realize I may not have all the info from behind the scenes, but I feel like I can get pretty close with this. Israel just needs to stop doing everything they're doing for 5 seconds while Trump does his thing. But I'd also like to point out, I realize this guy is persona non grata in MAGA right now, but Joe Kent did call this at 7:24 last night. This was the next step to peace.
It's absolutely essential that we ensure that the Israelis do not sabotage this 2-week ceasefire or eventually the lasting peace that we're trying to achieve. The last thing we need is the Israelis doing what they have done in past negotiations and targeting the negotiators or taking a series of strikes that escalates the conflict.
Turned out to be right. Look, if we can turn our planes around in midair like we did last night, then they can too. And Israel better just listen to us, because we give them billions of dollars a year. We bailed them out when we bombed Fordo. We annihilated Iran's military, which was more of a threat to Israel than it ever was to us. We did all that, and it cost American lives. So now I'm saying Israel better get on the Trump train and listen to his plan for just 5 seconds. Because the second we lost American life, I'm not interested in any input from any other country. Not Europe, not Israel, not Canada. No one. This is America's show. But I also want to address how stupid, how biblically stupid the majority of coverage has been on this whole thing in the last 24 hours. Right after Trump sent out this like gangster truth about the elimination of an entire civilization, every lib rushed to the camera like, no, we have to stop. We have to have a peace deal.
The only way we're going to get out of this is to have some kind of diplomatic solution.
What I'm hopeful of is that some negotiation is going on that can get a ceasefire and end this war.
They were having a negotiation with the Iranians. They just cut it off, and the next day, you know, we're doing airstrikes into Iran.
We need to end this war now. We need an immediate ceasefire. Iran, Israel, and the United States need to stop bombing and have a negotiated settlement.
Okay. So that was their stance yesterday. Then Trump does negotiate and spares, I don't know, give or take 100,000 people and all their power plants. And then the same people, they come back on and they're like, oh, Taco, like this guy, Malcolm Nance. Oh, Trump always chickens out. But the problem is they go out there reading whatever way the wind is blowing, as long as it's anti-Trump. And then they say it as if it's like some sort of fact. Okay? Do you want peace deal or do you want not peace? Like, make up your mind, guys. CNN probably takes the cake on this. Listen to these three clips. Same person, Aaron Burnett, saying three totally different, like, material facts, just depending on which way the wind is blowing to undermine Trump at any given moment.
This timeline of Iran being a few weeks away from a nuclear bomb is in direct contradiction to CNN's reporting. According to U.S. intelligence assessments, Iran is 3 years away from being able to produce a nuclear weapon if they wanted to. CNN tonight also reporting that Trump's military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities did not destroy Tehran's enrichment facilities. Sources tell CNN there is no U.S. intelligence that Iran is building missiles that could soon hit the United States. That's a really big deal.
Okay. These people will literally never be happy. This is what I'm saying. The left is more interested in trashing Trump than they are about world peace. It's actually remarkable. It's like a medical talent to be able to shove your head up your own rear so far that you don't even see how ridiculous you look. But that didn't stop them from all reporting that Trump had somehow agreed to this just crazy Iranian 10-point plan that he never agreed to, by the way. And apparently, when he got it, he threw it away in the trash.
The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team.
It's like he's fighting two wars. One against Iran and then one against the media in his own country trying to make him fail. The left-wing media, I swear, it's like they get on an airplane and they want the plane to crash because the pilot, like, they didn't like his tone when he told him to sit down. They're literally writing headlines like this. Oh, Iran won. Well, whose side are you on, people? Like, why don't you go live over there? You want to root for that side? Go. There's the door. I don't even know what they're still doing here. But you won't. And I'm sorry to ask like a really reasonable question here, but by what metric does anybody get to any type of place where you can say, yeah, Iran won this war? They have no navy. They have no air defenses. Most of their munition factories are complete dust. The 250 or so of their upper echelon has been completely smoke checked and their country's in chaos. Please explain to me, like I'm 5, how this is a victory for Iran, because Trump gave them a chance at a ceasefire. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out the guy who literally lives, or at least drives around in a glass bubble, the Pope, saying that this is unacceptable. Like, what? Are you my dad? Like, actually, I tell you what, Pope, what are you doing other than just talking to solve this stuff? Meanwhile, AOC and friends are renewing the sedition talking point, saying, oh, you can refuse orders that you think are illegal, making sure to insinuate that whatever Trump is doing that day is illegal and that they should resist it. Look, Obama and Biden, they purged conservatives from the military. So right now, senior leadership is very susceptible to this, I'm sorry to say. But right now, we're stuck with probably I don't know, over half of our officer corps so high on their own brand that they actually might listen to people like AOC or Mark Kelly or whoever. That's why Pete fired the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, fired like dozens of generals in the last month, which of course the media also had a meltdown over. But this is how the military works. If you can't be trusted to follow orders, then you can't be in the military, because if you question orders that are a part of a larger plan, you can get people killed. So I say just, again, let Trump cook. Like, do I want to be at war with Iran? No, but we're here, and we got to finish it out now, because if we don't, back to square one. Like, look, this is going to benefit everybody except the people who chant death to America when this wraps up. So unless you're in that boat, how about we try standing behind Trump, and when he turns Iran into Lake America, everything will be better off. Retired Navy SEAL Mike Sarraille and the guy who smoked Osama bin Laden, Rob O'Neill. Okay, Rob, we were here last night. We were very optimistic about both bombing or peace. Either one, I was fine. And now we got this. It's kind of a mix in the middle.
Yeah, what we're finding out that we've learned over in that part of the world, especially with enemy combatants, is they're going to lie to you, if you can believe that. They're just making stuff up, and they're making Hezbollah part of their deal. Like they're saying, whatever happens at Hezbollah, you don't do anything here in Iran. This is so weird. They're trying to negotiate with no leverage whatsoever. All the Iranians have are blown up buildings and then Democrats. That's like the only two things they have to show for it. And they got nothing. I mean, even I'm just surprised at some point we don't, okay, Karg Island, we're just going to take it now, and we'll take the oil, and now we can sell it for 4 times the price to Europe, and they can let us use their treadmills or their windmills. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. The things that don't work, neither of those things are good anyway. Cardio is for people who can't kill what's chasing them. Mike, you were convinced yesterday that these bombs were going to hit the target. I was too. I mean, you think there's a possibility this still goes down?
Well, they snuck one in at the buzzer. But hey, I've got to address something, Carl. Rob sent me the longest text I've ever received last night, talking about how his feelings are hurt. If I could, be gentle with his wardrobe selection. So, Rob, I apologize for hurting your feelings, and I'll post this to the world afterwards.
You guys are the worst.
That's weird. How you got all that from Shorty. You up?
So here's the deal. They snuck one in at the buzzer. Guys, this may last days. I don't think it's durable. And I really view these negotiations in 2 phases. The first phase is the mechanical, stop firing missiles, open up the straits. But phase 2, that's where ceasefires go to die, because their requests are ridiculous. They're non-negotiables that work against the U.S. interest. Like, they want control of the Straits of Hormuz. They want to collect tolls.
Sure.
They want to continue enriching uranium. None of this is acceptable. So this will ultimately fail. I was wrong last night. I don't think I'm wrong on this.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I was with you. I thought this was going to go down. All right. So here's the thing, Rob. The libs, they're losing their minds over Trump handling this whole thing. Scott Jennings, perfect mic drop. Roll this.
No president should ever threaten annihilating a civilization. Why can't you just acknowledge that?
Look, he's talking to them in the way he thinks he needs to talk to them.
Why can't you acknowledge that? That is something that no president of the United States should say.
Because I don't take orders from you, number one, and number two, I gave him the space to negotiate with the Iranians the best way he knows how.
All right, well, let me just ask one final, let me ask a final question.
I actually think it's fine to talk about the annihilation of your enemies.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. The only war crime committed, it wasn't saying we're going to annihilate a civilization. It was actually putting civilians around military targets, which Iran did. So the only one violating any Geneva Conventions are the Iranians. That's all it is to it. Scott Jennings deserves at least a Purple Heart for being there, too. I don't know how he can sit there with people screaming nonsense, and all they want to do is yell over him like that. It's crazy. All they want is the one-word answer, and then they yell their talking points. It's an act of incredible patience. The guy's incredible.
I would find that job deeply therapeutic if I got to go do that. But Mike, the White House announced that J.D. Vance is now going to step into the negotiating team for the peace talks on Iran on this Saturday. So, hey, look, he's the guy who didn't want to go into this conflict in the first place. So I think he's probably the best guy for this.
Yeah, I would agree. And first off, Scott Jennings is the only reason people watch CNN anymore, so that he dominates that entire that entire panel. J.D. Vance, I think, was extremely articulate and well-spoken on the airstrip there about the proxies, that Iran is trying to sneak the proxies into this ceasefire. Again, a non-negotiable. But J.D. Vance has shown the acumen. He's shown the demeanor to handle negotiations at this level. And quite frankly, I think we've got the right guy on the job, along with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner.
Yeah. Rob, you think we get out of NATO after all this thing?
I'm hoping so. I mean, there should be a new alliance. Most of the Eastern European countries get it, but the other ones like France, like one of my best things I say about France is I'm selling a French assault rifle, never been fired and only dropped once. Like they've been getting saved the entire time Europe's been around. They're going to need it again with a new crusade too, the way they're letting all these mosques roll in. So, I mean, yeah, we need to reevaluate it too, but they're going to feel the pain with the fuel, and I hope we don't give them a break when the prices come down this summer.
Yeah, and then, Mike, you got the Islamic Republic of London, too. I mean, they're basically useless.
Yeah, this alliance possibly once served a purpose, much like the UN, which has become the HR department for the world that will condemn you, but has no power to do anything. Guys, we just have different values. We have different visions. And maybe this is possibly the end of the NATO alliance. I still think there are a few that we want to align with. We talked about Poland last night, and a few others that have the same value system, that see the world as we see it, and are willing to go the distance and be there for us as we will be for them.
Yeah, Mike Sarraille, offending HR people all over the world. We appreciate it. Rob, Mike, pleasure. Okay.
Good to see you guys.
Coming up, barely 2 weeks on the job, and DHS Secretary Mark-Wayne Mullen is putting sanctuary cities on notice, and they better take them seriously. You got that one coming up. But first, one senator is investigating what the Biden administration knew and withheld regarding the adverse effects of the COVID vaccine, kind of like I've been saying for 6 years. And why is Big Pharma having trouble with vaccine trials? Well, we're going to speak to an expert in the field, Dr. Robert Malone, next.
Did you know that the ultra-wealthy legally avoid paying, while most Americans overpay every year? That extra money is costing them their early retirement. That's why best-selling author Mark J. Kwan reveals the simple, legal strategies the wealthy use to grow their fortunes and legally avoid taxes in his book, Be Smart, Pay Zero Taxes. Get your free copy of Be Smart, Pay Zero Taxes today with this exclusive Newsmax offer.
Why go on Roe? Because 1 in 4 guys experience ED. Guys, connect with a provider to find treatment that could be right for you, like fast-acting dissolvables or daily gummies. If 1 in 4 guys deal with ED, then 1 in 4 guys should go on Roe.
My heart has experienced life-changing wins, losses, and countless miles. To keep living at my speed, I trust Cunol CoQ10. CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist-recommended supplement for heart health. Cunol, the brand I trust.
The first time I experienced vertigo, the room was spinning, like I was in a clothes dryer. Then I started taking LipoBalance support. Its ingredients are clinically shown to help reduce dizziness and spinning. Take back control with lipoflavonoid.
Forget the warm-up. DirecTV got hot. They're on fire with more MLB games than anyone.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
How old are you?
11.
Another lost summer scrolling and swiping? Turns out the fix is right here. Create new lifetime memories from the comfort of your backyard. No passports, no reservations. Latham's premium handcrafted pools can be installed in weeks. Our pools won't stain or crack and never require costly resurfacing. And with our crystal finish, you can bring your favorite exotic watercolor and shimmer right to your own backyard. Visit LathamPool.com now. Latham is a proud sponsor of USA Artistic Swimming.
Senator Ron Johnson is determined to uncover what he calls the Biden administration's cover-up of COVID vaccine injuries, because I'm not letting this one go until somebody goes to jail. The Wisconsin senator, who chairs the Senate Investigation Subcommittee, saying, we're going to continue to dig, but I think we're just scratching the surface in terms of what they covered up. Yeah, understatement of the year. Johnson going on to say that the nature of the mRNA vaccine is, quote, only one of the things they lied to us about, saying they can't even bring them to call them vaccines anymore, saying mRNA technology turned your cells into a manufacturing site for the most toxic part of the coronavirus, sending spike proteins through the body, literally creating havoc. Dr. Robert Malone, a vaccinologist and one of the inventors of the mRNA technology. Sir, they lied to us about it and made a bunch of people take it, and now you've got injuries. What now?
So I had an opportunity to speak with Ron today. By the way, it's his birthday, so happy birthday, Senator Johnson, and thanks for your courage. So he is sitting on a pile after a huge amount of effort of something like 11,000 pages of documents, unredacted, that he and his staffers are going through using artificial intelligence to try to pick out information concerning what has been hidden. What has not been revealed to the general public, but was known to the government and particularly to the FDA, is the key issue here. And already he's uncovered that clearly additional documentation concerning the cover-up of myocarditis, the awareness that juvenile myocarditis was much more serious and prevalent and was acknowledged, and that this awareness extends back to the very early days. That's consistent with my interactions with the FDA at the time. And now the latest that they've managed to glean from using artificial intelligence to go through these is the signal of ischemic stroke in the elderly. Remember that we were told repeatedly that the elderly are the ones that needed this the most and that they didn't have anything to worry about concerning these products. Another thing that the senator is identified is the cover-up having to do with the masks. Of course, we all know that the mask narrative that was so actively promoted was false. It's self-evident that paper masks, let alone cloth masks, aren't going to stop a virus that, by the way, can also infect your eyes. But this is just another part of the propaganda. What we're dealing with is a FDA that is guilty and complicit in fraudulent data manipulation and cover-up, going back all the way through the Biden administration and back even into the Trump administration. And they are still stonewalling. The senator was very clear that he's still unable to get compliance with the FDA and with the commissioner to getting access to these key bits of information, including the pediatric deaths that you'll remember Vinay Prasad disclosed were occurring.
I don't mean to cut you off here, but I'm trying to get, so let's say we find something, okay? Anytime we have our own agencies working against people trying to get to the truth, I find that probably guilty, okay? So let's say we get to the bottom, because it's probably likely that they did effectively cover something up and specifically withhold stuff. Then what? What happens? Do people go to jail? Like, what happens then?
Well, that's a good question. I've dove into this. I'm not a legal expert, but I can use artificial intelligence to ask these kinds of questions. There's a number of statutes that could apply if there was the courage and intestinal fortitude within the Justice Department to do something about it. And that seems to have been one of the major issues, is this Justice Department until recently with the, has she departed or not, Pam Bondi, is stonewalling and uninterested in prosecuting or following up on these like so many other things.
It's also clear to point out that Pam Bondi did used to work for Pfizer at one point, so we're going to see how that goes. Dr. Robert Malone, pleasure as always, sir. I am beside myself, and I'm sorry your technology was completely perverted to use for this junk.
I was 28, so I had no idea what they were going to do with it.
Well, there you go. Thank you, sir, very much. All right, coming up, the DOJ, speaking of, officially removing Pam Bondi from her scheduled Epstein probe deposition next week. That's not really their choice. Some are threatened to hold her contempt if she doesn't show up. They should. We got that next.
TrueWork designs performance workwear engineered with advanced materials to be lighter, warmer, faster drying, and ready for real job site conditions. TrueWork, performance workwear. Shop now at truework.com.
Are you sitting at home living in pain? Maybe it's in your hands or your back or your hips. I'm here to tell you that joint pain doesn't have to be a life sentence. Hi, I'm John Walsh. For 40 years, I've been chasing down the culprits. And now I'm ready to throw the book at joint and muscle pain. That's why there's Omega XL, a one-of-a-kind, natural, powerful joint relief supplement. So I tried it, and it changed my life. Just ask anybody who uses it. The results are undeniable.
Last week, I walked 6 blocks. I was so proud of myself.
I ordered Omega XL, and now I have more energy than I ever had. It's been the best thing that I did because it relieves a lot of pain. Everything changed for the best. I can go out, I can hang out with my sisters, I can go anywhere, clean my house, do whatever I can and want to do. Now it's let's go, baby. This product is the best thing. You will remember what did it to you, and it was Omega XL.
That's the truth, the facts, and the hope that Omega XL can bring you. Case closed.
Call now or order online to receive our special TV offer. When you buy one bottle, we'll give you a second bottle of Omega XL free. Order now and we'll also include a free bottle of Vitamin XL D3. 2 free bottles for the price of 1 bottle of Omega XL. That's more than 50% off a value of $115. You pay only $49.95 and it ships free. Plus, you get a money-back guarantee. So buy 1 bottle now and get 2 free bottles with this offer. Call or go online right now.
If you're living with joint or muscle pain caused by inflammation, try Omega XL and see the difference it can make in your life.
Buy 1, get 2 free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $49.95. Act now.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dry premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Use daily dermatologist-recommended Dermend and reduce the appearance of bruises. Get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle.
Where's my mother gonna... Oh, no. Is this the episode with the breakup?
Reba, we can't agree on the house.
Y'all need Realtor.com. With over 500,000 new listings every month, you could find the one today. This could be it. Better put a key ring on it. Realtor.com.
Need blood pressure support? Total Beets contain a patented key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. That's why Total Beets is the #1 best-selling beets brand in America. Take control of your health with Total Beets. Search Amazon now for Total Beets.
As usual, the DOJ seems to be protecting their own instead of, getting to the truth and stuff. They wrote a letter to the Oversight Committee Chairman, James Comer, to remove, not ask, but tell them that they're removing former Attorney General Pam Bondi from the committee's April 14th Epstein probe deposition. They said in that letter, Ms. Bondi no longer holds that office. As a result, because Ms. Bondi no longer can testify in her official capacity as the Attorney General, the department's position is that the subpoena no longer obligates her to appear on April 14th. We kindly ask that you confirm that the subpoena is withdrawn. What? The original subpoena, if it required Bondi to appear for a closed-door deposition as the Attorney General on the 14th, so shouldn't it also include, if she can't come, maybe Todd Blanche should show up then? Bondi not appearing, not sitting well, though, with Ranking Member Robert Garcia, who said now that Pam Bondi has been fired, she's trying to get out of her legal obligation to testify before the Oversight Committee about the Epstein files and the White House cover-up. Whether she is Attorney General or not, she must come in and testify immediately. And if she defies the subpoena, we will begin contempt charges in Congress. Survivors deserve justice. I hate agreeing with that guy, but he's right. So does she actually still legally have to show up? Former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, Newsmax legal analyst Jay Town, constitutional law attorney Jared Roberts. All right, Jay, does she have to show up or does somebody have to show up in her stead?
Well, look, I do think she is going to show up. And it's an interesting argument that DOJ is making because she was subpoenaed. The letter from Comer and the subpoena subpoenaed the Attorney General of the United States to talk about issues inside of the Department of Justice. DOJ does have the ability to control former employees complying with subpoenas under the law and under the House rules. But this is just really sort of a bridge to nowhere because they can subpoena her as a civilian. They have to pay for her travel and she can bring her lawyer with her. But I don't know. I don't quite understand. And I think I appreciate your point of view, Carl. I don't understand the need for the delay. Just get it over with. Get this out of the way.
Well, right, but Jared, the other thing with this whole hullabaloo is she was still there when the mishandling of the Epstein files, when she said, the files are on my desk. There are no files. We got all these files. We don't have these files. We've released everything. Oh, wait, here's another 30,000. She was there during that. I still want to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, and I think we will hear what she has to say, but it's important to remember that the subpoena is against the office She's not the attorney general anymore. She's not necessarily speaking on behalf of the administration anymore. At some point, I do believe she will be before Congress. But at this stage, I do think that the administration is on good legal grounds with the position that they're taking, because it's standard legal procedure that when you go after somebody in their official capacity, it's against the office, not the individual. And she's no longer in the office, and therefore she's not a representative of the administration to talk on that.
Well, maybe they should just subpoena her straight up. All right, so, Jay, here's another one. The Civil Rights Division is investigating Cassidy Hutchinson over, remember her. She was the left's star witness in the J6 testimony. Of course, the New York Times put in their spin on it, saying that, the decision was keeping in the administration's bid to find new ways to use the powers of the federal government to target Mr. Trump's They're trying to accuse Donald Trump of politically targeting his opponents with the... Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that always gets rich when we hear that, Carl. And the interesting part about this is not that that it's been... The case is being handled by the Civil Rights Division, not by the Criminal Division. And that suggests, they haven't said why, they've been asked, but it does suggest that there is some sort of conspiracy against rights charge that they're mulling. Now, the other, rather than go to the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, it goes to civil rights. If Cassidy Hutchinson was outside of D.C., and I would suggest she was in Atlanta in 2022, then the proper venue could be the Northern District of Georgia, as opposed to having Judge Boasberg, as opposed to having a D.C. jury. You now got, a Northern District of Georgia jersey and those judges there. So I do think it's wise on the Department of Justice that they can take it out of D.C. to do so.
Yeah, well, imagine that, the Department of Justice not doing things right. Kind of like the Epstein files we just talked about. Jared, according to a new Daily Caller report, Vice President J.D. Vance's new anti-fraud task force identified $6.3 billion with a B, in government contracts that are going to what they think are potentially fraudulent businesses. So they asked 400 businesses. They were like, you got 30 days to prove that you're a real business, or we're just going to pull the contract.
Yeah, no, the vice president has truly brought great leadership to this administration. That's one of the reasons President Trump picked him. President Trump campaigned on getting rid of fraud within really draining the swamp. This is all part of that. For some reason, Democrats have fought him the entire time. I think that's a little telling. I don't think that Democrats actually have any policy agenda. They're just, if Trump is doing something, it's automatically bad. But this is phenomenal news. This is the accountability that everyone's been looking for, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Can I just add one more thing to that, Carl?
Go, Jay. Yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick. So he mentioned great leadership. Scott Brady, who was the former U.S. attorney in the Western District of Pennsylvania, he's the one who blew the lid off the Biden family's corruption at the end of Trump's first term, and then it was hidden by the Biden administration. He's the executive director of this task force, and Colin McDonald, the newly appointed assistant attorney general for the fraud division, is in there too. Great leadership tackling this fraud.
I got to say, too, I love the idea of, prove you're real or we turn off the spigot. That's, the most basic way to do things. J-Town, Jared Roberts, we appreciate both of you.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, coming up, New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani, extremely concerned that white people are too successful in New York. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he's worried about the wrong things there. Others are getting shot. That in our Culture Clash next.
Americans have lost billions of dollars in their retirement accounts during the dot-com bubble of 2000.
And inflation is only getting worse.
Patriot Gold Group just introduced our America 250 Inflation Protection No Fee for Life IRA.
I'm sure glad Eileen and I rolled over our IRAs into gold in 2019.
On Wall Street, there's a saying, sell in May and go away.
My saying is, call the Patriot Gold Group today.
Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 1-800-778-4156.
Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide. The only firm nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the No Fee for Life IRA. Patriot Gold Group is patriots protecting patriots.
Call now. 1-800-778-4156.
Did you know about 1 in 3 people with plaque psoriasis may also develop psoriatic arthritis? With fewer symptoms from moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, where would you go? Imagine being a million miles away. With Tremfya, clearer skin is possible. And for adults with active psoriatic arthritis, Tremfya goes beyond the skin. Less joint pain, stiffness, and swelling is possible. And Tremfya even reduced fatigue. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Imagine being a million miles away. Ask your doctor about Tremfya.
You can join the Tunnel to Towers mission to do good by donating your car to today's veterans. Your car donation will help Gold Star families, as well as injured veterans, our first responders, and our homeless veterans. Donating your car is quick and simple. Any car is accepted, and we will pick up the car for free. Simply call 844-BRAVES.
By donating your car, you can make a real difference. You can do good.
What if you're sick at home or traveling and can't get medical help or prescriptions? Doctors say a medical emergency kit is the answer. Joining me is Dr. Drew.
Thank you. And yes, these kits put you in charge of your health. They come with physician-prescribed medication to treat multiple common and some serious issues as well.
What are some examples?
Sure. Generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other essential antibiotics and antivirals that treat flu, pneumonia, strep, ear infections, sinus infections, urinary tract infections, and more.
So it is like urgent care and a pharmacy at home?
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
How do you know what medicines to take?
You just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Sound advice. Order online in minutes at the website below and save $45. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani, this guy, there is no other way to interpret what he's saying. Basically, like, white people are too successful in New York and something needs to be done about it. Basically, that's what he said. Roll this.
The racial inequities are stark. We are talking about findings that have shown that the wealth of a median white household in the city is more than $200,000, while that of a black household is less than $20,000. We are reckoning with the long history of racism here and starting to act upon a framework that puts equity right at the center of it.
Yeah. Who wants to know why? I mean, yeah, like, white people are always the problem because somebody else didn't succeed. It reminds me of when Biden said this.
The most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy.
That's interesting because that's not actually true at all. I'd like to hit him with the fact that black people, which make up 13.7% of the population, committed more than half the murders in the United States. So yes, please tell me more about how white supremacy is the most dangerous thing, especially considering that every year black on black crime is almost 4 times higher than the entire history of KKK murders in 100 years. Must be me, though. Newsmax host Ike Wingate and CEO of Compass Strategies, Luke Ball. All right. Ike, I just can't help but every time he said this is like, man, this guy gets worse and worse.
Yeah, Mamdani, of course, sits there and blames the report, Carl. And I don't know if he knows this, but a lot of these, dumb white people voted for him. Saying that white people make more money just because of their skin color. Either there's a huge industry in New York City for before models for spray tan companies, or there's a huge industry for sunscreen testers. Otherwise, this is completely baloney. And all he is doing is being racist in these remarks. I don't know why you would ever want to de-incentivize people from doing well and then blame their race for it. It makes no sense, but not surprising.
Right, and then he wonders why white people take their hedge funds and go to Florida. But, I mean, we don't wonder. Yeah. All right, here's another one for you, Luke. Mamdani's promises completely failed here. Free buses. That's actually not going to happen because the state senator, Jeremy Cooney, said that we don't have any money for this.
There are so many promises that this guy made to try to get into office. I think they would completely fill up all of the billboards in Times Square and then ultimately tick off one by one as the reality has a train wreck with the promises that he made, because there's going to be a point in time where you're going to have so many unfulfilled promises that they just become lie after lie. And then all of the people of the city are going to get upset with him and say, why haven't you done all of these things? And he's going to try to say, well, the reality actually makes it impossible for me to do so, and then they're going to get mad at him and probably go and elect somebody that's even more further left wing.
Right, and then the city will be a mess, and people will continue to get raped and murdered, and that'll be awesome. Ike, as if airports aren't already a mess, Democrat lawmaker called on DHS to reintroduce the shoes off at the TSA lines because, you know, it's reckless and dangerous not to basically give everybody a proctology exam. But TSA, dude, they have caught approximately, give or take, 0 terrorists in there since they were formed after 9/11, and they have failed 90% of contraband tests when things going through luggage, when they're actually tested on. So what are we doing here?
Yeah, we definitely should go to more private security entities for this kind of stuff. Duckworth, I find it ironic saying that this is reckless. What about the fact that you left DHS open and unfunded? What about that? Wasn't that way more reckless than this, the vulnerability that our country has been put through because of the inaction of lawmakers? And then you're going to call the shoe policy, which is one of the best changes in travel in recent memory. If they could just get rid of the belt thing, we'd be golden. But that's not what they're interested in. She just wants to somehow throw shade on Kristi Noem indirectly. But she's got egg all over her face, if you ask me.
Well, yeah, that starts with the D in front of her name. But anyway, all of a sudden, the left cares about history, though, Luke, all because it involves Trump's border wall. Now, libs are throwing this like massive hissy fit because some 35-meter tall like monolith that's considered sacred by some indigenous people in the region. Well, that site had been damaged slightly during the building of the border wall. Now, these newfound preservationists, Luke, are the same people that spent years tearing down statues of history in America that meant something to someone.
From Mamdani to this, it's all virtue signaling from the left. They could care less if people are human trafficked over our southern border, if there are children that are missing in the United States that we have no earthly idea who has come into our country, could be terrorists, criminals, murderers, rapists. They care if maybe we nick a statue in the process of trying to construct a border wall. They care about pandering like that in place of actual policies that are going to keep the American people safe. And if that's the worst thing that comes out of building the border wall, then I think I would call it a success.
Yeah, well, I think the border wall is a success anyway. Ike, Luke, pleasure as always.
Thanks. Thanks, Carl.
All right, coming up, DHS Secretary Malone floating the idea of penalizing sanctuary cities by going after who can get through their airports. We're going to tell you how. It's actually pretty smart. Next.
Another lost summer scrolling and swiping. Another lost spring break. Turns out the fix is right here. Create new lifetime memories from the comfort of your backyard. No passports, no reservations. Latham's premium handcrafted pools are ultra durable for any climate. Can be installed in weeks, not months. And have hundreds of designs, sizes, and colors to choose from. For 70 years, Latham Pool has remained the gold standard in bringing backyard dreams to life. Our pools are easy to care for, won't stain or crack, and never require costly resurfacing. And with flexible financing options, your dream is within reach. And with our crystal finish, you can bring your favorite exotic watercolor and shimmer right to your own backyard. It's never too early to start planning for a lifetime of memories. Visit LathamPool.com now. Latham is a proud sponsor of USA Artistic Swimming.
I got a CT scan, and the next thing that I heard was you have to have surgery immediately or you have 4 months to live. It was the hardest moment of my life because I felt like the world fell out from under me.
It was the worst news I've ever heard. Our world changed that day.
Every 15 seconds in America, someone like Jay hears the words, "You have cancer." And this year, more than 600,000 Americans will lose their lives to this devastating disease. But hope lives because of people like you. Go online or scan to donate just $25 a month. Your gift will help save lives.
If I have a chance to make it through this, it will be because of the American Cancer Society's focus on research and innovation.
At the American Cancer Society, we're leading the fight against cancer on every front, funding breakthrough research, helping patients reach life-saving treatment at no cost, and giving families a free place to stay near care.
I don't know how many more holidays I'm going to have with Jay. We need a cure now. The American Cancer Society gives us that fighting chance.
Cancer doesn't stop and let you catch up. It's continuing to move. The funding to the American Cancer Society allows us to keep up the pace with cancer.
Your monthly gift helps fund the research and care that families like Jay's depend on. Become a monthly donor today and receive this American Cancer Society t-shirt as our thank you.
Hope is something that has helped me get through this and given me the courage and the strength.
Cancer won't wait, and neither can we. Please go online or scan to donate today. Every minute, every dollar, every act of hope brings us closer to a world without cancer. Donate today.
DHS Secretary Malone may withdraw customs from airports in sanctuary cities. This is actually genius. I am super here for this. He said, quote, if there's a sanctuary city and they're receiving international flights and we're asking them to partner with us at the airport, but once they walk outside of the airport, they're not going to enforce immigration policy, maybe we need to have a really hard look at that because we need to focus on cities that want to work with us. Now, reports say that this would end international travel at U.S. airports, where about 58% of international traffic actually comes into. Good. Just think about the impact of this, though. Most international flights are coming to blue city airports because no one from Europe is landing in, like, Topeka, Kansas. You want to mess around? You'll have no more customs, and now you can't admit anybody. I mean, places like Dallas, they'll start pumping people in from international flights. Not to mention the amount of revenue they'll get in ramp fees from foreign aircraft. I mean, this could be great for red states. Lora Ries, Director of Border Security and Immigration at the Heritage Foundation, and Simon Hankinson, the Senior Research Fellow, Border Security and Immigration Center, the Heritage Foundation as well. Lora, I mean, it would bring millions of lost revenue from blue to red states.
Well, that's true. What also it's missing is that those Customs and Border Protection agents are enforcing immigration law. It's not just about customs, it's about immigration enforcement at the airports, just like they do the land ports and the seaports. And so opponents to this idea that Secretary Malone has floated said, no, we need enforcement at the airports, but no, you can't do enforcement in the interior. It's completely inconsistent. It's hypocritical, but it's all because they don't want deportations conducted inside the country.
Right, and then they just wouldn't be allowed to admit anybody, which would render those things pretty much useless. All right, speaking of airports, another crazy organization right now, what we just talked about, TSA, which, by the way, the government is still partially shut down in case anybody forgot. The White House is proposing to cut more than 9,400 workers. Just, you know, it's like a $1.5 billion from the 60,000 employee TSA thing that handles airport and all this stuff. Look, you know, Simon, this could actually be really good because we used to survive fine before 9/11 with this stuff.
Yeah, I think it was one of the post 9/11 freakouts where maybe we overreacted a bit. We created DHS in a hurry and slammed together a bunch of agencies that haven't always played nicely ever since. And then we created TSA as a professional agency to do something that, as you say, had been privatized before. And I'm not sure why we couldn't reserve some of those jobs, the supervisory ones, the really highly technical ones, and then privatize the rest of it, because I've been flying in and out of airports all year, and there's quite a bit of those jobs that could be done by private companies, probably cheaper than the federal government and with a lot more flexibility.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a proponent of, like, make planes like trains and not have any security, because I would carry my gun and bad guys would probably not try to mess with that. Speaking of catching the bad, or not catching the bad guys, I should say, Laura, last week a Haitian illegal immigrant beat a mother of two to death with a hammer outside of a Florida gas station in, like, broad daylight, okay? Surveillance footage showed the guy smashing the victim's car windshield. He approached her and repeatedly hit her in the head with a hammer. He killed her. And would you imagine that? He first entered the country in August of 2022 and then was released into the country under the Biden administration. A federal judge finally issued a final order of removal against him in 2022, but the Biden administration granted him temporary protected status, which expired in 2024, and he's still here.
Yeah, not only is this a brutal case, but so many points where this guy shouldn't have been let in and should have been deported. And it's also another example of why we can't just settle for worst of the worst as to who it should be deported. He should have been deported long ago before he became a criminal. We have 20 million at least deportable aliens. This guy was one of them. So we need mass deportations, not just quote unquote criminal aliens.
Yeah. Simon, remember the shooting last year at Florida State University where the gunman killed 2 people, wounded 6 others? Well, now the victim's attorney claims that ChatGPT helped him plan the shooting, writing, quote, "We have been advised that the shooter was in constant communication with ChatGPT leading up to the shooting. We also have reason to believe that ChatGPT may have advised the shooter how to commit these heinous crimes. We will therefore file suit against ChatGPT and its ownership structure." I mean, like, at some point, these people can't just throw up their hands and say, "Well, we didn't do it. It was AI."
Yeah, that is a terrifying prospect. I mean, we all remember the lawsuits against gun manufacturers because, of course, the gun manufacturers made the gun, made you go out and buy it, made you go and shoot somebody. This is kind of the extension of that. I'm pretty terrified about what AI is going to do in so many areas. But if we start saying that people aren't responsible for their own actions because they were chatting with a bot, then, like you said, the door is open to doom.
Yeah, but I mean, Laura, how many illegals are using AI right now to circumvent our immigration system?
That's a good question. I mean, our immigration system is riddled with fraud, and that's before AI came onto the scene. This is a tool that makes fraud even easier to commit.
Yeah. So, well, that's going to be an interesting thing to see. And also, I know that AI goes both ways, good and bad, but I still think that Terminator was a warning, not a blueprint, and some people didn't get that memo. Laura, Simon, we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
All right, before we go, he comes from the land down under and speaks for pretty much all of us. That's next. Oh, by the way, from Studio Z.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
At Allegiance, we do it differently. Flags 100% made in America, by Americans, with American materials.
We're proud to create jobs right here in South Carolina. It might not be the easiest way, but it's the right way.
We make American flags the way they should be made, where they should be made.
Join our pledge to keep the American flag truly American.
Visit showallegiance.com to get your high-quality American flag today. That's showallegiance.com.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
No way this all fits.
Watch me.
Oh, we're watching, Gary. They're right. We need WeatherTech.
I thought they only make floor liners and cargo liners.
Really, Garrett? Really, Garrett? Who do you think made the seat protector, side window deflectors, no drill mud flaps?
And the cup foam.
And I just ordered WeatherTech's newest products. Ta-da!
Hitch Basket makes for easy loading of heavy and bulky gear and increased storage capacity with a roof basket up top. Buy American at WT.com.
WeatherTech for the win.
The crisis inside Ukraine has reached a catastrophic level, with the elderly Jews pushed to the very limit.
Go inside. She's freezing cold. There's no electricity, no heat, no water. Winter is now a weapon of war, used against the elderly, the mothers, and the young children.
They've been lined up here for hours. These are precious people who are hungry, and they have nothing. If someone doesn't do something soon, a humanitarian disaster is coming. So many Jewish people who are just waiting for someone to care enough to pick up the phone
fears are growing that without an emergency, full-scale response, thousands will die this winter.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews needs your $25 gift now to help rush a winter survival food box of emergency food for elderly Jews and families in Ukraine. Time is critical. Please give now.
They felt the shaking of missiles. These are people who have already endured so much suffering and disaster.
The fellowship has been here and across the former Soviet Union for decades, but the need has never been more urgent.
Taking out power, taking out water, simple water to drink. We're talking about the difference between life or death. Christian, Jew, standing shoulder to shoulder, saying, we're here to heal, we're here to help.
Your gift of only $25 helps rush a winter survival food box filled with life-saving emergency food for elderly Jews and families in Ukraine who are struggling daily to stay warm and fed. Please call or go online while there is still time.
Support your long-term health with Fatty 15, the science-backed, award-winning Pure C15 supplement.
Fatty 15 is reversing aging at the cellular level, and I know it's doing what I want it to do, which is improve longevity and wellness.
Discover more at fatty15.com.
Folks, we know how crazy the left is, sometimes so crazy that we don't even have words to try to explain basic reality to them. But I found a guy who basically said what we're all thinking. Gary Noonan, a legend, a construction legend in Australia, his response to so-called renewable energy that caught my eye. Here's what Noonan's saying basically about the Green New Deal that we all wanted to say.
We have coal because we've got the biggest coal deposits in the world, but we're not allowed to burn the stuff, so the world's rooted, really. It's all right to be idealistic, but you also have to be realistic. And until the lights go out, the idiots that want to be green on everything and not do mining, not do coal, not do anything, they're going to have to go back and use candles and live in tents, and then they'll no, you might laugh, but it's true. You understand what I'm talking about? I'm not talking bullshit, I'm talking reality.
No.
If we don't get realistic, we're it's as simple as that. We're not allowed to use uranium. We've got the biggest uranium deposits in the world in Australia. We're not allowed to mine the stuff. So it's all. So when half these die, well, the world will be a better place, and then those of us that survive will get it going again. My next door neighbour, I was talking to him, he's a lawyer, so he's not an idiot. Well, he is a but that's another problem. But he said, oh, that's right, you just put plugs along the highways. I said, but if you haven't got a source from a power station, plugs on the highways aren't going to do jack, right?
I mean, the fact that he was just rolling and rolling and rolling, he's done with it. Rob, I've wanted to say that to basically every single guest I've ever had that's ever supported the Green New Deal.
I mean, I love a good Aussie when they've got the right line of thinking. There's so many of them that have gone woke in that country. That guy gets it. That is good stuff.
It was put plugs. Where does it come from? Who knows? Anyway,
who knows?
We'll see you, Rob.
I love it. Good to see you, Carl. All right.